Welcome to the 4x4 Canada podcast. I'm Joel Tremblay and I'm your guest today. This is my first ever podcast. I spend a lot of time on Zoom and online video conferences and things like that, but this is a lot more fun, I'd say. I'm fairly active on social media. People can find me on YouTube just under Joel Tremblay. More notably known for the Chuck Box, which I coined my 5x8 cargo trailer, which I converted to be sort of the ultimate off-road overlanding off-grid camper, which also doubles as an ice shack in the winter. I'm also on Instagram, Tacoma the North, dedicated for my truck page, which I'm currently building right now, is the most practical overlanding Tacoma. I'm an active ambassador for Overland Nth and an active admin for Crownline Camping Ontario Facebook group, which we just crossed over 80,000 members. People can check out my website, tremblaycreativeco.com, for more information if they're interested in reaching out for anything. On a career side, I am a licensed architect in Ontario, and my niche is in the off-grid scenario, off-grid topics, mobile architecture, and that's where my passion lies with overlanding within Northern Ontario.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm your co-host, Trisha.
And I'm your other host, Wes. Thank you for a great introduction, Joel. There's a whole bunch wrapped into that I want to explore.
There's a lot packed into it, yeah.
Definitely. Being a Tacoma owner, I'm interested in that. And the concept of your trailer, I've been watching you through your Instagram and your YouTube videos, what you've been doing with that. Absolutely love that idea, going with a cargo style trailer and converting it there. And I also did some sneaking around and checked out some of the off-grid design work that you've been doing with some of the off-grid cabins and that. So I definitely want to talk about that a little bit later on as well. Before we get into it, I want to mention our episode from last week. It was our episode number 100. And Trish and I had so much fun talking with Mike from the Unexpected Off-Road. Mike was my very first guest pretty much 2 years ago. And he was there on number 1, and he came back to join us on episode number 100. We talked about his new EV Hummer, which I have had a chance to drive. But we also talked a lot about what it took to get to episode 100. And we all three of us shared our favorite episodes, which is really hard to do when you have 100 episodes. It's hard to pick 5 of your favorite episodes, right? That's like try and pick your favorite kid, but sometimes that's a little easier. But it was a really interesting conversation. We had a lot of fun, a lot of laughs. And if you haven't checked it out, go back and listen, and you can maybe learn a little bit more about the podcast and some of our favorite things that happened over the last couple of years. Next week, we have Ben from Falcon in the Woods, and he is a East Coaster, and he's running the Jeep Gladiator. And so this is going to be our second or third East Coast guy we've had in the last couple months. So we really trying to envelop this whole across Canada. It's not just BC and it's not just Ontario, but we love the East Coast, and we even love Southern Saskatchewan as much as people may not believe it. But if you are a listener and you are up in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, Manitoba, Quebec, we have not had anybody from any of those areas. So we would love to talk with somebody. I have a real big interest in the North, especially say Yukon, Northwest Territories. And I would love to talk to somebody that spends a lot of time up there. So if you'd like to be on the show, or if somebody wants to be on the show, please reach out to us on Instagram or at our website, 4x4canadapodcast.com. And we would love to hear from people other than Alberta, BC, and Ontario. So, Joel, you are a outdoor enthusiast from Northern Ontario. You drive a Toyota Tacoma with a cargo trailer all decked out for camping. And we talked about that a little bit earlier, but have you always been a outdoor and exploring person?
Short answer, yes. I grew up in a small Northern Ontario town. It's called Hornpain. And by your guys' reaction, I don't think you guys know where it is.
No.
It's either, everyone I say or talk about Hornpain to someone, it's either like a light bulb. I just see it on their face. It's a light bulb because they've either driven through it, took the train through it, or know someone or a family friend or someone who's from there, or they have no idea where it is on the planet Earth. It's a weird little quirky town, industrial town with the CN Rail and logging industry between Highway 17 and Highway 11, just north of Hearst. And I guess it'd be White River on 17. It has a population less than 1,000. And
Wow.
the interesting fact of that town is actually it's a few kilometers away from the geodesic center point of Ontario, which is way the freaking up north. We're talking about North Bay here, and it's North Bay is still quite 8 hours or 9 hours south from Hornpain. But yeah, I grew up hunting, fishing, exploring my four-wheeler or in the truck with my father, and then later on with my grandfather. And really that passion just has always been ingrained within the roots of just going hunting, going fishing, going pick blueberries, things like that, and just being outside and traveling those old logging roads.
It's funny, we were talking off air about how big Ontario is, and you mentioned that it was the center or close to the center of Ontario. And a lot of people just do not realize that how huge Ontario is.
Yeah, it's insane. So like my family moved from Hornpain to North Bay in 2004, which it was a big step up from us. It was like the first time I seen streetlights was in North Bay. And then that was like a big town or a big city for us. Later, I went to school, university in Toronto. And when I was finishing high school, I thought, I'm getting the heck out of Dodge. I'm going to go become a city boy. And it took me like a month and a half. And I was like, okay, I can't wait to get out of here. But I think at the time they finished the highway, but it was like, it's a 4-hour drive from Toronto to North Bay. And that drive is nothing for me. But you talk to anyone else like who lives in Toronto, they're like, wow, you drove all the way from North Bay? Once you get to North Bay, it's 8 hours to anywhere after. And that was like normal for me. It was like an 8-hour, 9-hour road trip. So the 4-hour road trip was easy to do in a weekend.
It's incredible how huge it is for sure. And how different some of it. Northern Ontario, you guys have got a lot of the Canadian Shield running through a lot of there. So you got a lot of rocks and a lot of mud kind of idea. But even you get down into Southern Ontario and it's just more farmland and stuff like that. So it's a wide variety of landscape actually in Ontario, surprisingly.
Totally. And I'd say to anyone traveling through Ontario, if you're looking for suggestions, I would say take Highway 17 because it follows the coast of Superior. And that's where you really see this clash of the bedrock, the boreal forest coming together. And it's a beautiful scenery. And within that stretch of highway, you really get to experience some pretty unique landscape of Ontario. And the interesting I find, like the crazy statistics, and then I end up researching all this while I was in school, developing my thesis in my trailer because it was just part of my studies. But like Northern Ontario, 95% of it is Crown land. So only 5% is like private, which is a crazy statistic if you zoom back and look at like the area. So that's massive amounts of land that's deemed Crown, right? It's not privatized. Yeah.
It's massive. I didn't even know that. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, here's a silly question that basically, because I'm from the West Coast, but out in BC, we have rec sites, which are basically camping sites. Some of them are paid, some of them are free, etc. And some of them are maintained by organizations like the Four-Wheel Drive Association of BC or other organizations, and some are maintained by the government kind of idea. And Alberta does not really have that. They have parks and they have campgrounds and parks, but if you go off onto Crown land, they don't really have rec sites. Do you guys have rec sites out there?
No, I'd say it's pretty much the same as Alberta. There's like you have to hunt for yourself to find campsites. Like over the time, those nice accessible spots get developed by just people. And unfortunately, at the same time, the ones that are easily accessible get used and abused. But there is there's probably similar overlap between different organizations. We have the snowmobile clubs and things like that will maintain some of the roads and stuff like that, or there's seasons to go wheeling and whatnot. And you have to buy memberships, so it kind of pays to keep maintaining that. But I'd say mostly, you're either shopping through provincial park to get like a designated site, or you're exploring on Crown land.
It's interesting how it's different across Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So let's hop into the trucks. What was your first 4x4?
I had a 2007 Ford Ranger FX4 Level 2. That was my first truck. I loved it. And I took that thing places that a truck should not have gone. And really, it was like the kind of like catalyst into this whole overlanding thing or off-roading thing without even really labeling it any of that. It was just like, okay, I live up north. I want to get a pickup truck. I don't need a big F-150 or something like that. So I'm going to get a Ranger. And I had the fact that once I got into doing some technical trails, not technical, I don't go rock crawling or anything like that, but I'll go down service roads and then get into some 4-wheeler trails and stuff. And the smaller compact wheelbase of the truck was a lot more nimble. It was the suicide doors of the 6-foot box. And eventually, I guess I've had the Taco for a year and a half now, or I guess over 15 months because my son's 15 months now, but I had to get rid of it because I couldn't put a car seat in it.
No.
So it was a good excuse to get a new truck. Yeah.
That's great. So you moved into the Tacoma. Tell us about the Tacoma.
Yeah, that's a 2023 Toyota Tacoma Trail Edition. It's still mostly stock as of right now, but I do have some big plans for it. And like I said before, what drew me to the Tacoma was just like their outstanding reliability and aftermarket availability and modifications. And just being a designer, I was just really attracted to the body lines and things like that. And the Trail Edition, even though it was more expensive to get less out of, let's say, a truck, if you get the TRD Pro or whatever, you get more. I don't think you get more bang for buck out of the TRD, but out of the off-road you do. But I just like the look of the Trail Edition so much more with the bronze accents. So they won my heart there. And I was hopping into a truck that the design was still, let's say, 10 years old, or maybe not quite 10 years old. So it doesn't feel totally new, but I was okay with that. It's the naturally aspirated V6. The first thing I did was get the OTT tune because I instantly noticed that the 6-speed transmission was just like gear hunting like crazy. And I'm towing a little trailer and I was like, what is going on? So I got the tune and that fixed that immediately. Put a fiberglass cap on it, which was ridiculously priced. The amount of money I paid for that thing was stupid. I actually sold the Ranger. Like my negotiations while selling the Ranger was if I make that money to pay for the cap, and I got basically every dollar. So I sold a truck to buy a fiberglass cap. But my plan with the cap was to basically outfit it with a rugged off-grid electrical system. So it's got a 100 amp lithium battery on board, like a house battery with a charger, a 20 amp solar MPPT charge controller, and that hooks up to mobile deployable solar panels. Then I got linked up with Oxbeam, who has been good supporters of kind of what I do. So I've installed their fog lights and their switch panel they sent me 6 of their big 5-inch LED lights. I've always admired and I always liked the trucks that have like the trophy trucks with the big round lights on the roof.
Yep.
But I was like, I'm not paying $2,500 for roof lights that I might turn on like once in a blue moon. So they're asking me, what would you like to do next? I was like, I have this crazy idea. Send me 6 of your lights and I'll put them on my roof. And I figured out my own kind of DIY like mounting system and everything. And I think it turned out pretty good. And that's so far as just laying out the foundation. My plans are to get like a mild lift with some more aggressive tires. But as far as that goes, I've been really happy with the truck, just what it can do in its stock configuration.
The solar and electrical that you got hooked up on there, I think you did a really great job. And our listeners should go check out Joel Tremblay on YouTube. And you've got a really good video. Actually, I think you got a couple of videos about your electrical system. And for somebody like myself that I'm not the greatest at electrical, it's a really good video to watch.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm totally self-taught through YouTube and just years of tinkering. As a kid, I used to take Xbox controllers apart and modify them. And I honestly, I can't tell you where take things apart came from. It was in my DNA. And so from early on, just played with batteries and wires and things like that. And then it came time to, when I was building my trailer, is that I really wanted to make sure it was off-grid. Based on, and learning from like my background growing up, going hunting and stuff like that, it's so common to just rely on generators and like fuel-fired power sources. And then I was like, okay, we're 2020, 2022, 2023 now, and COVID is just screwing everything up. So I was like, I'm going to learn how to build like a solar system, like a system that can charge itself. And so DC electrical is fairly easy. Red positive, black negative, don't touch them together, and just make sure to get your wiring sizes. And that's how I took making the videos as well, is that I'm not an expert. And so I don't want to be like, my narrative isn't a how-to, it's a how I did. And if people want to tear me apart or say or give constructive criticism in the comments saying, oh, I think you should have done this differently, then that's great, because we're all here learning. And I didn't go get professional training to build electrical systems. I just was self-taught, but I want to storytell and share people kind of my experiences putting something together, and going on 4 years of the systems I built, and nothing's burned down yet, and I've never ran out of power. So I think it's working.
Doing something right.
Yeah.
So the trailer, just looking by it, it's not a teardrop trailer. It's a cabin trailer, or cargo trailer?
A cargo trailer.
Cargo trailer.
Yeah, it started off as, or a enclosed utility trailer. Yeah, it was, I guess that's the street name for it. Yeah.
And if there is a difference between the teardrop trailers, they look nice and they're neat and cool, but they don't offer a lot of room. So how much room do you get, and why did you go with the cargo trailer?
Yeah, my cargo trailer isn't that much bigger than a teardrop. I get that impression a lot when people go and see the trailer in person. They're like, oh wow, that was so much bigger. But the beauty of wide angles and things like that. But yeah, when you get a teardrop, essentially is a shell for your bed, so you can't really stand up in it. You may be able to sit up in it. My trailer isn't that much bigger, so it's 5'2", I'd say, interior height, so you can stand up in it, but you're bending your head a bit. But it is really comfortable to sit up in, and it is a nice enclosure for your bed. Funny enough, right now I'm actually planning a new build because my wife is, hey, we don't have room to bring the dog and our son camping now because we're just in this little trailer. But I was always battling that mobility off-road and stuff, is I don't want to go too big, so it's like really gets tricky with going off-road, and I have some funny stories of that too. But I see a hybrid between a traditional trailer and a teardrop. It's that middle ground.
So you set up the inside pretty good on that. I was watching, so again, going back to your YouTube videos, I watched quite a few of them with when you're setting that up, and maybe you can give our listeners a bit of a walk through the trailer.
Yeah, I got a good spiel on the trailer, the concept, the build, the thesis, and it all spawned. It's almost like I had this idea for a long time of something I wanted to build, but I didn't really have the opportunity to actually spend the time to explore it. I was finishing my Master's of Architecture at Carleton. COVID hit, and so I ended up having to spend a whole year online developing a thesis project. And a thesis project, essentially, you have to do deep dive research into a topic and write a book, essentially. But in architecture, you have to design something, and I didn't want to just design something. I wanted to walk the walk, talk the talk. I wanted to build one of my designs. So I was like, okay, I have this crazy idea to build a trailer. And my professor's, what do you mean? And I'm like, I have all these activities I like doing in the outdoors, and I have a problem with traditional RVs because I've owned RVs before, and 6 months of the year or whatever you're not using it, just sits there, takes up space. So it's like, how can I make something that has a multitude of functions, like a Swiss Army knife? And I was just coming off living out of a trailer for 4 months because my wife and I were like, we moved out of the city during COVID because we're like, we're not going to pay rent to an apartment if we don't need to be here. But we don't want to quite move in back home with mom. So it was like, let's just buy a trailer and just live in that for a bit and see what happens. And we did that for, I think, 4 months, and it was fun. But traditional RVs, like a lot of them have like their mass production qualities that aren't great. Yeah, I was looking for something that I can facilitate kind of the activities I do overland, and then essentially raise the question, or my question for my thesis was like, how can architecture overland? And I was looking at Northern Ontario, how we move upon the landscape, how we do it in a self-sustaining and self-reliant way, and tread lightly, all those things. And then I got to a realistic aspect of it. It was like, okay, what's my budget? Because this thing's going to cost money. And what are my skills? Am I comfortable building one from scratch? Well, it's like, okay, no. And I don't have the budget to buy one brand new. So I found a little 5x8 trailer on Marketplace used, picked it up, and started tearing it apart within owning it for an hour. And yeah, so I converted it to be, I super insulated it. I put some nice finishes in it, built an off-grid electrical system for it. So it's all off-grid. It has a diesel heater on board, and it has ice fishing holes. So basically the idea was that it's still a utility trailer at the end of the day because everything can fold away. And when we bought this house, I ended up using it to move, right? Just threw a bunch of furniture in it, and I can go to the hardware store and throw stuff in it. And I use it as a storage shed at home when I'm not going out camping. Everything can be set up to camp out of, or in the wintertime, I can pull it out in the lake and pop the catch covers off and drill my ice holes and do some ice fishing. And in the end, it's, as a concept, I think works really good because I tried to make it do everything. It doesn't do every little thing perfectly. And I found some interesting things that kind of compete for one another. So for example, like for ice fishing, you want your ice hut close to the ground, tucked to the ground, because the higher up you are, like the easier it is to lose your heat and stuff like that. And it makes it awkward because you imagine if you're like 20 inches above the ice, you have 20 inches to the ice surface. And then if there's 2 feet of ice thickness, you're 4 foot trying to get that fish through the hole. But then if you're going off road, you want ground clearance. And so is that striking that balance of, okay, am I lifting this trailer or am I trying to make it do the one or the other? So that was fun coming through that. And to wrap it all together, basically what kind of started the YouTube channel was doing a video docu-series of a step-by-step build process. And again, it wasn't to be like a how-to, it was just to be my story of how I did. And those videos, as I was finishing school, started popping off and it grew and grew. And since I've finished and stuff, I've just become this great thing that I do on the side, which is still a passion of mine. It generates some passive income and it allows me to meet some great people like you guys and participate at some amazing events. And yeah, the videos are still doing great. I think the one has rendered over a million some views, and it's really just to inspire people to show them what they can do with some basic hand tools.
That's cool.
I love the concept of the cargo trailer because, like you mentioned, you got a little bit more height to it. That's one thing I don't like about the teardrop style. And putting shorts on or pants on, you got to do the shimmy and stuff like that. So at least you got a little bit more room in the cargo trailer. And I also love the fact that you can still use it as a trailer. You fold things up and you can still throw lumber or boxes or motorbike or whatever in there. So is the multi-use is key, I think, too. Not all of us can afford to have a couple different trailers for each use.
And that was my thinking or my marketing spiel if I were to create a business doing this, was that why buy 3 trailers to do different single purposes if you could just buy one and do them all? And that's exactly it, because if I go bird hunting in the fall or something, I'll put my fat tire e-bike in there, I have a little rack for it, and it's a little toy hauler, and then that doesn't need to be in there when you're camping, so you just take it out and then you set up your camp within it. And it's just like that multi-use of that space.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I highly recommend. It's hard to explain it a little bit sometimes, so I definitely recommend people go and checking out Joel Tremblay on YouTube, because he's got some really good videos breaking it down over the years of the build and a few changes and stuff like that he made. One of the videos I watched the other day is a little bit unrelated to the trailer, but was your Iceco fridge. And there's a newcomer to the marketplace, but they had a couple things that I like on it. I've got a Dometic, and one of the things I struggle with sometimes is the batteries and stuff like that. But the Iceco I see has a battery monitor screen on it. Is that correct?
It is, and I haven't fully explored, or maybe because my system is really large, so like anytime I run the fridge, the battery monitor on the fridge just says full. And so I purposely tried to drain it down, and I haven't seen it go down, but it's also because the fridge is very efficient. And yeah, I was really excited when they asked me to take them on as a partner, because I do know of the Iceco brand. I never got some personal use of it, but after owning it for, I think I'm going on 4 months now, maybe a little bit more, I'm really impressed. I've owned a different style fridge and won't name it, but it's just the quality doesn't compare. And if you're spending big dollars on something like a fridge, which is a really nice luxury to have, no more ice or soggy egg curtains, getting one that's a higher quality, that has a good warranty, that's quiet, and it's efficient is important.
Definitely. And having said that too, Pete, you also want to go with something that has a good, whether it be a solar system or onboard lithium battery to run that off of. And that's one of the things I'm struggling with myself right now is trying to figure out what I'm going to do for an alternate power source.
Yeah. And so I know that's exactly it, because we're asking a lot of these things of this technology. And I work with a lot of mechanical engineers and electrical engineers, and I tell them I have a little 12-volt fridge in my truck, and they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I just leave it on all the time. They're like, what? They can do that? I was like, yeah, no, it's very efficient. I'm like, I'm surprised myself. But it's also, I've made sure that I have that capacity to supply that demand. And I also have a few different opportunities to feed that demand, charging either through the DC-DC charger or solar. And that's one important thing, is to always make sure you're topping up that battery, and then having a good sized battery. And lithium nowadays, just it's the way to go. Best bang for buck in terms of weight and capacity you get out of it and lifespan. I've been working with Canbat since the very beginning of the trailer build, and they're a Canadian battery manufacturer and by far the highest quality. They're really expensive, but that being said, I don't think like I will ever be replacing a battery in the next 10 years.
Yeah, it when you look at it that way, it makes sense for sure. And lithium batteries are so compact nowadays too, right? Like they don't take up a huge amount of space. They are still, some of them are still large, but you don't have to keep it underneath your engine compartment kind of idea, right? You can put them in different places, which is a nice thing. And now I'm still learning on the lithium batteries, but am I correct when I'm saying that they basically run flat and then they'll drop off, where it's a regular style battery sort of goes down gradually kind of idea, right?
Yeah, it's a lot more of, what's the word would be, like a plateau graph, and then it drops, but that plateau is like really long, and the life cycle of how many times you can run that plateau is like tenfold, right? Like I think they're the ones like I have a 100 amp hour lithium on my truck as a auxiliary battery in the box, and then I have a 150 amp hour on the trailer. They're both rated to, I think, over 3,000 life cycles, and that's 100 amps over 3,000 life cycles, which is that's a long time. And they warranty them for 10 years. The one Achilles heel with lithium batteries, which I think now they're starting to solve, is cold temperatures. So lithium batteries do get affected by cold temperatures more aggressively, I'd say, than, let's say, lead acid. But companies like Canbat and most of them now offer like self-heated batteries. But what you have to be careful of is that the battery isn't using its own internal power source to heat itself, because then it's just continuously killing itself. So it's having that capacity, but also having, I'd say, redundant ways to charge or provide power to that battery. And for the best system, especially in Canada, which is, I'd say, the most or the harshest climates in terms of throughout a year, you go from 40-degree summers to minus 40-degree winters. You have to have something that can live in that range. So yeah, it's interesting. I could talk about lithium all day long. It's crazy. And that's just part of things I started getting really interested in as I was building my own system. Just, you get obsessed with it.
Yeah, for sure. You started the YouTube channel with your planning of the trailer and your build out of the trailer. What did your professor think about this in the long run?
Oh, he loved it. Cool. And it was very uncommon in terms of completing a university thesis, my master's of architecture. And I was like, here, like I did write a book and everything, and it was more of the same thing. Like it was my journey, my successes, my fails, and my research before, and then a little memo at the end of, okay, what is next? And now we're living in that what is next stage, which is interesting. What created the need was that specifically in the program that I was in, is that everyone was producing drawings or coming to reviews with like research and topics, things that they spent the previous week working on. And then here I was like, I put a window in, and it was just like, that's it. That's the conversation. And so I was like, okay, I got to do something more than this. I created the channel to use as a progress log of step-by-step of how the thing got put together, which just happened at the same time. It just started really growing traction. So it was just funny because it was like, oh, now I'm like making some money while I'm doing this thing and becoming like getting noticed and stuff. And it was like weird that way. But in terms of actual like making videos and storytelling and stuff, I was making videos like when I was in like high school for like for mountain biking and stuff. And I really just loved this aspect of filming activities and then storytelling after, or compiling the clips and making a good story, and being focused on like videography, angles, harmony of like just light and color, balance with like good sound, music, things like that. And then I went to school, forgot all about it until like my last year for my final project. Here I was making YouTube videos again. And so it just reignited that passion for, I call it storytelling. Maybe other people have other words. That's the best way I can describe it, because it's not just like you're taking your GoPro and like filming some activity and then just uploading it. There's a lot of time into the editing, into the research, into the upfront packet of before creating that package. And that's a lot of fun for me.
Do you find the editing is some of the most fun out of your video making?
The video editing is starting to get a little, I'd say not. Yeah, it's a delicate thing. It's a delicate because like there's highs and lows. There's times where it's like very tasking, especially being a dad now and like prioritizing like things. It's, oh, I want to go do this, but I got to do this. I got to edit this thing. I sit down for so many hours. And then the one thing I've started, and I try not to let it like weigh over me, but it's like you put a lot of time and effort into a video and it just tanks. It doesn't do well. And it just gets, okay, here, I'm going to shove myself off the floor and do this again. And it tanks again. And you're like, oh boy, why am I doing this? And then you just have to remind yourself, okay, this is fun. You're doing this because it's passion. And then doing things like this too is very motivating because it's just talking with other creators and things like that. It reminds me that everyone's just doing the same experiment, right? And so it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a lot of friends that are YouTubers, and it's a common thing that comes up is, oh man, I'm just getting burnt out. Or I've got a friend that he hasn't put a video out in a month, and I just don't have the energy for it right now, or there's lots of things going on in my life. And I'm like, just you do you, right? There's so many people that are in that same boat where they get burnt out or the want or the need is not there anymore. But in the long run, it's good, especially after seeing some videos that putting time and effort into it. And as you mentioned, tanking. It's funny. We've had episodes where I thought this is the best episode and it's a popular person and it's going to go great. And it's like, the viewer is like half of what it normally is. And it was like, what the hell happened there? Kind of idea, right? And it's
been there. And it's just, and I think it's a constant, just like having to remind yourselves, like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And I got into this just for the love of storytelling. And what really, like, I guess puts a hop in my step is like hearing people going, even if it's like friends going, oh yeah, like, I watched that video, and I get like red cheek because I'm like, oh, a little embarrassed, but I'm doing this. And so it's fun because it's for a lot of people, it's a way just to distract them from whatever things that is uncomfortable for them. And for a moment, they just get to be happy or be inspired, or they're looking to learn something. And here we are providing it. And for the viewer, it's free, but we're just offering time, knowledge, experiences. And I think the ones who do more successful are the ones who are trying to go the extra mile just in terms of being authentic and telling a nice story with something with passion and meaning behind it.
Yeah, 100%. I was at the BC Overland Rally a couple weeks ago, and our numbers have been down a little bit, and that's just all because of Apple's been doing some weird things on their side and a couple of reasons like that, the whole algorithms and all that stuff. So our numbers have been down a little bit. But going to the BC Overland Rally and seeing all these people and these people coming up to me and saying, hey, love the podcast. You and Trish are doing a great job. I love this episode or stuff like that. And it's just like, okay, this is worth it kind of idea. People are enjoying it. And because podcasting is a little bit different because you don't get the feedback that you might on a YouTube channel where people can comment and stuff. So you don't necessarily hear that. Yeah, that's true. That's true for sure. But so having said that, and I'm bad for this, but having said that, if you do enjoy a video, just make a quick little comment and let the person know, because it actually does mean a lot to the creator. And even though it may not mean a lot to you, but when the creator hears positive stuff, it just makes them want to do more.
I'd say, and I come from the background of, and that's what they grind into us at school, is get critiqued all the time on the work that you're doing, that you're putting out there. And you're in a way putting out your content is you're vulnerable to feedback, but providing constructive feedback is also just as good as just leaving hey, I love this episode or something, but saying, oh, you know what, I would enjoy if you guys did this differently or something. And it's just, okay, you know what, I get that. It's a good point. And it allows you to structure and build that machine that hopefully one day it just takes off.
So Overland North, Joel, you are a ambassador of the event and the whole team. Do you want to tell our listeners about Overland North?
Yeah, so funny enough, I got linked up through Overland North on, I don't know if it was YouTube or Instagram. I can't remember. I think it was YouTube. They did a giveaway, and I just so happened to be their, I think it was YouTube. I was so happened to be their 100th subscriber, and they gave me like a front runner little camp cook set, little utensil set. And then I just was like, hey, what you guys are doing is really cool. And then Luke was like, yeah, you should come out to one of our events. And I said, okay. And then it just snowballed from there. I've been to every one of their events except for their very first one I missed. So yeah, I'm an ambassador for them. I typically provide, I'd say, media content coverage, and I help them with operations and maintenance. During their events, I've participated at the Sportsman Show. I had a booth set up with the trailer, and I also provide talks or as like a presenter, just showcasing what I've done, things that we talked about right now. What I love about Overland North is they are super beginner friendly atmosphere to get involved as like a first timer overlander. A lot of people I run into, they're like, hey, I want to get an overlanding, but I don't have this or I don't have that. And it's people are so easy to get, I'd say, like the gear goggles on or whatever. Yeah. And it's just like use what you got right now. And that's the great thing about these events is that they're open and friendly and the culture. And so a lot of people who I consider close friends now I've met at these events, and we do our own little things together. And so I'd say like the culture, the people, and the food is worth the admission at their events. They have a professional chef on Saturday produce the feast. And yeah, just if you guys are listening and interested in, or if you've heard of Overland North, I'd say make sure to check them out. They have the gathering that's just happening in August 2020 or August 23rd to 25th at Calabogie. And I'd say the gathering is usually the biggest event that they have. They have 2 or 3 events a year, and the gathering is the one you don't want to miss.
Yeah, definitely a fun time. Trisha went for her first time last year, I believe it was.
Last year. And guess what? I signed up today to go to Calabogie.
Awesome.
Right
Yeah.
I haven't signed up yet. Yeah.
So I'm excited. Now I'm like, okay, what gear do I need to have? How do I prep my weekend now? Like, how much gear do I need to get?
Yeah. And I know the one criticism I would hear from a lot of people, or a lot of, let's say, call it the hardcore enthusiasts, is that it's like, well, this is an overlanding. We're just going in. It's like a festival. Yeah, but that's the point of this. Is not. It's to build that culture and that community, so you can find your group, or you find your knowledge and your knowledge sharing, and you're inspiring other people. Right, have your setup on display, and people go, "Oh, I like how you did this," and not one setup is the same. And that's what's really unique about it, right? Because overlanding doesn't have a defined boundary. It overlaps so many different activities. And look at me, I show up with a cargo trailer, right? And so it's cool.
It is pretty cool. You're right. And it's cool to see everyone's rig and setup is different. And I loved going there the first time. I was like, you said, like gear goggles, because, oh, that's cool. And this person has this setup and their kitchen's like this, and they have a pullout, and there's like the trucks, and you have the Jeeps, and it's just different. Rooftop tents, and some people are still ground tenting. So if you don't need to have all this gear and setup, you're going there just to meet and be within that community.
Yeah, totally.
And that's what it's all about, though. It's a community. And that's something the overlanding community I've found to be very, for the most part, welcoming to everybody. So it doesn't matter if you're driving a stock Ford Ranger, or if you've got a decked out Jeep Gladiator, right up to guys running the old Porsche 914 or something like that. Like it's so many different vehicles, but there's so many. It's quite welcoming. You see somebody with some of these events, and you meet them for the first time, and you end up becoming lifelong friends up with them.
Yeah, exactly. I can't remember I think it was Overland Journal was the quote I always to paraphrase, is that, and it goes along the lines, overlanding isn't about the destination or about the gear, about the trucks. Those are just the means to an end. It's the culture, it's the people you meet along the way, it's the food, it's the interesting stops, the journey in between. I consider overlanding like the prep before, right? Because you're just sitting there, okay, what route are we taking? What stuff am I packing and things like that? And then you're like spending all this time finding a place for everything, so everything is in its place, and setting up redundancies if you're going off-road with far away from any kind of help. Is okay, if I have a flat tire, do I have a way to fix that? Do I have water? Do I have shelter? Do I have a secondary means of shelter if something goes south? Do I have extra gas or fuel? And it's like things like that which evolve, and you're constantly learning. And at these events, that's where you get inspired and go, oh, hey, that guy did that interesting. That person did this interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, this person did this trip last year. I want to ask them about that. Yeah, that's the great thing about them.
Yeah, the one thing they do have the courses as well, right? Like the driver training courses and recovery courses, not as well as other things like simple first aid or how to read a map and stuff like that. So it's not just go there, check out the vendors, check out the vehicles in the parking lot. It's a full festival of courses and food, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
It truly is a festival. That's the best way to word it, is that it is a festival.
Exactly. Like I know Calabogie, there's going to be some trail runs and obstacle things, and there's like dedicated things where it's like, hey, here's if you want to ease into it, and then it's okay, you hardcore people, go have fun, go break your rigs, go do what you do. And last year at the gathering, it was cool because on the Sunday, as everyone was leaving, I was like, a bunch of us were like, oh, can we sneak onto the off-road course? And I think it was Chris from Overland Canada was like,
yeah,
he's amazing. Like he brought me through the course. I was towing the trail. I towed the trailer through it. And the truck was doing crazy things with the trailer. And I was like a proof of concept. It was like, I've taken my rig down some pretty crazy trails, but this was like deliberately going to the edge. And that was like nice because I got to feel a little bit more confident or gather some skills that I don't want to necessarily learn on my own out 40 miles away from any sort of help if something did go wrong, especially towing a trailer.
Hey, Chris is a great guy. I was hanging out with him a couple weekends ago at the BC Overland Rally, and we've interviewed him before on the episode, and really interesting gentleman with his whole background in that. So if our listeners haven't listened to the episode with Chris from Overland Training Canada, go back, check it out. I think it was back just before Christmas, and it was really interesting. He's not just a guy that teaches you, he's a guy that's done it. So
yeah, he's a wealth of knowledge too.
So when you are overlanding and camping and out in the woods, what are you cooking? What interesting foods do you like to cook?
Yeah. So I seen that question float in when you guys wrote it, and I was like, that one kind of puzzled me a bit. And my first bullet point here is time and place. There's a lot of times I'm rolling up and I just need to eat something. It's food is fuel type of thing, and whatever, it's raining or it's crappy out, and I'm not cooking. No, I'm just eating and going to bed or something. I also do lots of backcountry backpack canoe camping for multiple days on end. And so usually you're relying on like those dehydrated meals, but I always try to put in a little bit of effort to do like a catch and cook. So I'll bring some rice or things and do a little bit more of a bougie meal. So if I'm catching fish or something like that, and that's always like a huge reward, especially if you're like day 5 eating the mountain house, you're just like, I'm sick of this. And then you have fresh fish paired with nice oil and like on a bed of rice. It's just, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. So with that mentality, when I go overlanding or like truck camping and stuff like that, I do try to go a little bit above and beyond, since like I have the means to cook well, since like I'm bringing all this stuff with me. And I made sure to have the rig I got the Blackstone grill, I have the fridge, and I have the propane and the water. And so it's like I have a little kitchen out and whatever. We've done a few interesting little meals. I usually try to bring moose meat or something with me too. And then so like I'll pair it up with some, I don't know, anything really. Just trying to make the most of it, really.
Yeah. That's the one thing. We ask this question a lot, and a lot of times we get the same answer. It depends on if I'm rolling in at 9:00 at night. I'm just going to have quick smokies and a bag of chips or whatever. But I'm finding a lot of people when they go camping and they have the time to do good cooking, that they're spending the time to do it, doing some prep work at home and going from there. And I've started doing more and more of that myself this year as well too. But yeah, I find for a lot of people, it's just sitting out in nature. The birds are singing, you got a campfire going, and just cooking a good meal is just one of those things that just, it's hard to explain.
Like it's when our busy days, it's really hard unless you have a passion for cooking and you like deliberately like chunk out time. It's at home or just cooking, and it's because we got to move on to the next thing. But when you're the whole point of getting out is to relax and get away. It's okay. How am I going to keep myself busy? I'm going to cook. So I'm going to make sure it takes me 2 hours to cook or something like that. And then you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor.
And you've got a little one now too, right? So that also affects the diet.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, little changes there.
He's been out a lot. Last year, I think we had him out. Like he's done 30 nights camping last year. Like he's only 15 months. We did 10 days East Coast. We did 6,200 kilometers in 10 days with him. And then every other weekend, basically, we're going out camping and whatnot. And he's gone. We just got back last weekend from a little trip, and we're going next weekend. And so he's getting lots of exposure to the outdoors, which is really important to us. Yeah.
That's cool.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Starting from young. My goal is 30 nights this year. If this dude's got me beat and he's only
he's got you beat, Wes.
Yeah.
He's got you beat. That's too funny.
Sorry, go ahead.
Are you camping, and do you do a lot of more local things like on the weekends since you are out every other weekend? Are you staying in within North Bay, Ardbeg, like that area? Like the VMUT system? Or are you going Crown?
VMUT's Crown with Jensen, my wife, and stuff. Like we do lots of provincial park as well, just because it's like provincial park, so you're getting your sight, thing like that. It's safe. And I do lots more, like I do a lot of, or actually I've only ever brought him overlanding and stuff because like vehicle camping, because he's not old enough to like bring him backpacking yet. Because there's that tipping point of right now, if we need to leave, we still can just hook up the trailer and drive. Whereas if you're backpacking and stuff, we have to hunker down for the night because we can't leave. It'll be interesting to get to that point and what that experience is going to be like. But mostly I always laugh every time I go to an Overland North event, because I'm always like, it's weird going south to go camping because it's not common for me. And usually the only time I go south or to go camping is for the Overland North events and stuff. Usually I'm northbound. Yeah.
I can't blame you on that one. Have you found that having your son has really changed how you guys are camping and exploring in that?
I would say yes. I'm a lot more sensitive to how bumpy the roads are and like some of those places we're getting to, because I definitely hear it. But it's also I don't want this to sound braggy, like pat on my back, like what I build, like I'm keeping my family safe, and it makes me feel good that it's working. At least that's the least of my issues. I screw up dinner, it's whatever. If the camping site's not great, or the way in wasn't great, but at least I know that, okay, if it rains or thunderstorms or whatever, or the setup is good, we're not going to run out of power, we're not going to freeze to death, we're going to remain dry, everyone is safe and happy generally. I've become a lot more in tune with that, I'd say, like their well-being more than just me just being like, because I go out for 8 days in end of April and I'm freezing my ass off, but it's just I'm doing that to myself, so it doesn't matter. But it's definitely changed a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
Have you named your truck?
It's funny. I asked my wife this. I was like, did I name my truck? We have names for everything. Like we had names for the Ranger, every other vehicle we've owned was Ranger. Yeah, my wife hated it. The Fusion was Fusion. It's, I don't know, for us it has to be like the first letter of the name has to match the model or the make.
They're like close nice.
And my wife has a Forerunner, so hers is Tay or Taylor because she's a Taylor Swift fan.
Oh,
but I don't have one for the Tacoma yet. No.
There you go, guys. If you come across, let's check his channel out. Check out his Instagram, and if you think of a name, let him know.
Throw it in the comments.
So we've talked about the outdoors a little bit, and we've talked about how you want your son to grow up doing these kinds of things with you, and that. Why is you exploring and going back to the outdoors so important to you, and why is it important that your son is involved in that as well?
Yeah, so it's definitely that's a great question, and I'll try not to rant for too long because it's essentially, and as a reflect, I think it's generational knowledge that gets passed down from one to the next, and it's experiences and skills and moments that you can't teach, right? Unless you do. type of thing. And it's almost like something that you don't realizing you're getting until like after. So growing up, like hunting and fishing and going 3 hours down a logging road to get to the bush camp and to live out in the bush for a week, like with my dad or my grandfather to go hunting and stuff. It's at the time, like I was really young. And so it was fun and stuff. But now that I'm older, I reflect on those moments a lot more, and they become really important to me. And in a way, just develop a passion for conservation, self-sufficiency, and self-resiliency. And just in a way, it's like doing that with him brings back like my inner childhood, but also I hope stems those moments and experiences for him to just, even if you're not consciously, no one's consciously saying, oh, hey, this is important to you. It's something like years later, you're like, yeah, okay, that actually helped shape who I was and allows me to somewhat have a level head during the day and not freak out. And I always know that's something I can go to breathe, I guess, is the best thing I can say. And that's the best way I can explain it. Yeah.
It totally makes sense. I'm sitting here thinking about the adventures that I did with my dad 40 years ago. And like you said, it was fun, great, whatever kind of idea. But as I grew up to be 18 or 20 or 25, and I would end up doing some of these adventures with myself. And then as I've grown older, I'm looking back on these adventures that I did with my dad. And there's two things to it. There's the, like you say, how it makes you a better person, how you can react to situations differently in that, as well as be more interested in the safekeeping of the outdoors and that, but also the memories that it creates. I'd love to go on one more trip with my dad, right? So it just creates those memories for sure. Do you want to give a shout out to some of the companies and people that you're working with? We talked about Overland North and stuff like that. Do you have anybody that you want to give a shout out to that people should know about?
I guess it's a weird world in terms of when I'm trying to say this so it doesn't sound like I'm an idiot here. I work with a lot of companies, and I got a lot of requests just creating a YouTube channel. And I hate using the word influencer, but I get requests like daily from companies to spiel their products and stuff. And I've always been really careful and really picky. And maybe that's not to my advantage because I don't make any extra money really doing this, but I really try to be focused on high quality products, great brands who stand behind their product, and things that I use and trust. So my best advice, if you're interested in sort of the things that are the companies that support me, I'd say check out my website, tremco.com. I have a page dedicated to my partners, and I update that as kind of things become relevant, and then update them as things don't become as relevant. But yeah, the companies have been really good. The more notable ones, and I think I've talked to them before, Overland North's a big one. CanBat, which is a Canadian lithium battery manufacturer. They produce the highest quality batteries out there. Isaco has been really good. They're a new brand I've taken on. I've been really happy with that. And for anyone who's interested in fishing deeper, they provide smart sonars. They're the size of the tennis ball.
Oh, really?
This is like a super cool product. And I could talk about this product so often. I always get questions about it. It's not very popular in Canada because they're a European company, but it's the size of a tennis ball. It's a smart sonar that connects to your phone. So I do lots of backcountry canoe fishing or backcountry fishing in general. And you're not lugging a big sonar with you, like a big ice fishing deucer or a helix or something like that. Yeah. And so this thing is like super versatile. And so you're not fishing blind while out in the backcountry. And it's great because you can also use it in the winter as an ice fishing deucer. But yeah, they've been a really good brand too. And like super, again, like it's expensive, but I definitely believe in the buy once, cry once. Sometimes it's worth just waiting a little bit longer to save up to buy something that's going to last several years or longer than buying something you can afford now and then having to replace it and buy again later, which in the end, you're just spending more money.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. If you had nothing else to add on there, Trisha, do you want to ask the last question?
So last question we ask all our guests is, what Canadian we like to hear on the 4x4 Canada podcast?
Yeah, so this one took the longest for me to figure out like a name because I kept going, oh, it should be this person. And then I like scroll down and I'm like, they've already talked to this guy or they talked to this person. And so the one name I have, and I know I've already dropped Truckhouse Life. I know he's not Canadian, but he'd be a really cool guy to get on there. Anyways, talking about, winter in the Arctic and Alaska and stuff. Like, that guy's the guy you want to talk to. But someone who's super relevant for Ontario, and he's in kind of the circles that we all know of. His name's Dan Novak from Beast Off-Road. He's an amazing personality. Again, a wealth of knowledge when it comes to off-roading, technical terrain, and just mechanical modifications to vehicles, because he is a manager for Beast Off-Road. And every time I hang out with him, it's always a great laugh, and I'm always learning from him.
Dan, John, we have to get you on the show. People have recommended them. Every time I go to them, I'm like,
haven't yet.
I know, I'm like, Dan, John, come on.
Yeah,
Christian's working on them.
Just walk into their shop one day, just walk into the shop and just be like, okay, live podcast right now, it's happening.
Yeah, you're on the podcast right now. Here's the mic going. I'm going right now.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I've definitely heard a lot of good things about the crew at Beast Off-Road for sure. And I know Trisha's got a lot of work done there. And yeah, we definitely want to get them on board. So if you guys are listening, hit Trisha up.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Or if you're listening and you're going to Beast Off-Road, bug them to
bug them
reach out. Yeah, totally.
Help us out. Come on.
Help us out.
Awesome. Once again, we were talking with Joel Tremblay out of Ontario, and basically Joel Tremblay on on Instagram and YouTube. He's got, I think you just mentioned, you just passed over 100 videos on your YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, I'm like 104 now or something like that. But it's crazy. Like, it just adds up over time. And I don't know, it's, for a lot of people, it's like 100, that's it. And then other people is, wow, 100. I've always tried to produce, I always tried to make good quality content. And I'm not so keen on like the shorts and things like that yet. Yeah. It's just, I don't know, TikTok world, I'm staying out of it. I like the long format storytelling. Just as you can see, I like talking to people. But yeah, the YouTube channel has been great. And we're just about to cross 18,000 subscribers, which is amazing, incredible. I grew up in a town with less than 1,000 people, and here I am, like, I put a video out, and sometimes it reaches thousands, and it is truly amazing. And meeting some of these people in person, who they come up to me and are like, "Oh yeah, how's this and how that?" And they're like talking to me as if they know me, and I'm like, what's your name? And it's humbling. It's really cool because it does validate. It's not just numbers behind the screen. I am putting stuff out that people are spending time to watch. And I want to make sure that people are watching the content, that it's either entertaining or informative.
I think you definitely hit that with a lot of your videos for sure. Sorry, Trish, you wanted to add something there?
Nope.
Cool. Okay, cool, Joel. Like I say, check him out on Instagram and YouTube at Joel Tremblay. And really appreciate you coming on tonight. And I know it's a bit late over there, but really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us tonight. And I know I enjoyed the conversation, and I'm pretty sure our listeners will as well.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me. And yeah, it was a blast.
Thank you, Joel, for coming on. And I guess I'll see you at Galboogie.
Yeah, we'll see you at the gathering. Cool.